Hey, good morning. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Thanks for spending these few minutes with me. I've got my ever-present cup of coffee, but you've probably noticed another, decoration of sorts on the table here with me. This is our church's Advent wreath that we've got up. We're just starting to decorate for the Christmas season. Some of our teens did it on Sunday night and a little more to do, but this is one of the centerpieces, and that's the Advent wreath. That's because this season of the year in church world is called Advent. Now, typically you might think Baptist churches aren't those that celebrate Advent as a rule, although I think it's becoming more and more common that that's happening. It typically was a more liturgical church, a Catholic, Lutheran, Presbyterian, Episcopalian, Anglican. They were the ones that had those seasons of the year that they observed and the decorations that go with it. But I've seen more and more of this catch on, and it's a really interesting thing because it is meant to build expectation for Christmas. Now, I know there's a lot of expectation already for Christmas. Everybody's excited about it. You've got your plans probably being made, or you're starting to. Some people may even already be finished with their shopping. And maybe you have a few special things that you're looking forward to as well. There's already a lot of expectation that happens around the holidays. But Advent as a particular observance is meant to build that sense of expectation in us, not about the presents and the family gathering and all that, but about the coming of Christ. In fact, the word Advent means coming. And so the idea of the Advent season, usually the 4 Sundays leading up to Christmas, is we anticipate the coming of Christ. And part of what I think is also part of what we need to do is try to put ourselves in the shoes and in the mindset of those several thousand years ago, 2,000 plus years ago, that were looking forward to the coming of Christ. One of the favorite messianic prophecies in the Old Testament, he writes many, but Isaiah writes several, but one is in Isaiah chapter 2. I'm not going to read the whole chapter to you, just a couple of verses. The first one is Isaiah chapter 9, verse 2, that says this: "The people walking in darkness have seen a great light, and those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned." And then over in verse 6, he said, "For unto us," this is probably the one you recognize, "for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulders, and he will be called," or in Handel's Messiah, "his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. And of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end." This is one of those prophetic predictions that Isaiah, an Old Testament Hebrew prophet, wrote to the people, looking forward to God rescuing them. In that particular time, Isaiah lives probably 700 or so years before Jesus. He's a prophet in Israel, and he's at a particular time in Israel's history where things aren't good. They have enemies that are around them, primarily Assyria and then later the Babylonian Empire, that are gaining in power. And God, because of the disobedience of his people, the idolatry and some other things, wants his people to come back to him, to trust in him. And so one of the ways he does is by allowing them to be taken away into captivity, the Assyrian captivity for the northern kingdom, the Babylonian captivity for the southern kingdom. And so you could see how in the midst of a world with these threatening enemies around you, closing in, and then ultimately carting you away. Within 100 years of Isaiah writing all of this, that has happened. The northern kingdom and the southern kingdom have been conquered and taken away. And so this is a difficult time in Israel's history. And so you would expect them to want some hope. What is our hope? We want God to come, Advent, the coming of God, to particularly rescue us. And Isaiah looks forward to the day. Notice it says the people walking in darkness, that idea of darkness. You could see that as an analogy for the very difficult times that they were living in, for the threat of foreign invasion and trouble. And Isaiah says a light has come, and that light is in the form of a baby. Unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. That prophetic look ahead to Jesus and his coming. So part of Advent is we go back into these Old Testament and maybe some of the early New Testament passages leading up to Jesus' birth, his coming, and we try to put ourselves in the shoes of those who were so anxious, maybe even desperate for God to show up and to rescue them, for his coming to provide relief from the difficult circumstances. Now, we're 2,000 years past, at least in the timeline, of the birth of Jesus that Isaiah looked forward to for 700 years. But we know, even 2,700 years after Isaiah wrote these words, the world is hardly sorted out. The world is still a bit of a mess. There's still plenty of evil that happens. We've seen lots of that. It doesn't take much to see that kind of evil that happens, even most recently in the Middle East and the things that happened that started this most recent conflict between Hamas and Israel. We saw some just unthinkable, horrible things done in that conflict by Hamas that started it. And we see just that reality. And that's just one conflict. It's not limited to there. We can go around the world and talk about genocides and other issues. We can talk about child trafficking, child sexual trafficking, all sorts of evil that exists in the world. We know that even though we look back 2,000 years to Jesus coming, there is still difficulty. And here's where Advent is not just a look back, it's also a look forward. For us, we're kind of between two Advents. We're past the first Advent when Jesus was born in Bethlehem and came to provide for the spiritual salvation of all who would place their faith in him. When he was born, grew up, died on the cross, and rose again. And then his second Advent, his second coming, when he returns to set right all the wrongs and usher in his kingdom. Like it says here in verse 7, of the increase of his government and peace, there will be no end. We're still looking forward. So when we put ourselves back in the shoes of these Old Testament or early first century believers prior to the birth of Jesus, we feel that desire they had for God to rescue, but we also feel it in our own world. And we, like they looked forward with expectation to the birth of this child, we look forward with expectation to the return of Jesus. And so over the next several weeks, we're going to walk through some of the things in what we call the Christmas story as we lead up to Christmas. It's a Monday, so Christmas Sunday morning we'll be here. Sunday evening we'll have our Christmas Eve service, and then Christmas Day on Monday. We'll be working through these next 4 Sundays through the themes of Advent. We'd love to have you join us. We'll light one of these candles, and eventually, we don't have that in yet, but the center candle that's not here is the Christ candle that we'll light together on Christmas Eve as a symbol that Christ has come, that Advent season is coming to a close as we celebrate the birth of Jesus. So it's just a symbolic way, along with some other things we do, to put ourselves in the mindset, to get reminded of how we desperately need God to come to our rescue, how we need that Savior that Jesus was. And so I hope you can join us as we go through this Advent season. Sunday mornings, 9 a.m. That's when we get together. That's when we'll start lighting the candles this Sunday and over the next 4 weeks. And we'd love to have you join us for Christmas Eve service, Sunday night, December 24th, 6 o'clock candlelight service. All of that leading up to one of that very special service that we have. So just wanted to introduce the idea of Advent in case you're new to that, particularly in Baptist world. It's less well known, but also to encourage you to feel over these next weeks in all of the hustle and bustle, all the things that you have to do, the parties you're planning, the gifts you're buying, the extra responsibilities that come, to make some time for expectant hope that Jesus, who has come, will one day come again, and we'll worship him together, looking forward to when he sets right all the wrongs. All right. Well, that's it for today. I'm going to let you get about your Wednesday, and I'm going to get back about mine. Like I said, love to see you on Sunday, 9 a.m. in person, or we'll stream the service as well on our website. We'll post the link on Facebook. For some reason, we're having trouble getting it on Facebook, but we usually post the link there. So watch for that. Join us. We'd love to have you in person, 9 a.m. I think I've said that already. I think I've said too much, so I'm going to say have a great Wednesday and hope to talk to you soon.